Hey everyone, and welcome. Ever wonder what's powering the super dynamic websites and slick apps you use every single day? Well, there's a really good chance it's React. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and see exactly how it all works, from its most basic building blocks all the way to the massive world that's been built around it. Let's get right into it. So here's the game plan. First, we'll get right to the core idea of what React even is. Then, we'll dive into its building blocks, we're talking components, and see how to make them interactive. After that, we'll zoom out to look at the wider ecosystem, and we'll wrap up with why React is still such a dominant force today. All right, first things first, what are we actually talking about when we say React? Let's get right to the heart of it. Okay, so here's the official definition, and it's actually pretty simple. It calls React the library for web and native user interfaces. Now, the two words you really want to pay attention to here are library and native. Library tells you it's a flexible set of tools, not some super strict rulebook. And native, that part is huge. It means the skills you learn building a website can be used to build a real mobile app. How cool is that? So if React is a library of tools, then what are those tools? Well, it all comes down to the single most important concept in the entire React universe, the component. You know, the easiest way to get this is to just think about Legos. Seriously. In React, every little piece of a web page, a button, a search bar, your profile picture, is its own self-contained Lego brick. You build these individual, reusable bricks first, and then you just snap them together to build something way bigger, like a whole application. And here's what one of those bricks actually looks like in code. This is a basic video component. At its core, it's just a JavaScript function that's set up to return some visual stuff. And right inside that return statement is where you'd place your other bricks, like a thumbnail or a like button, to assemble the final piece. Now, you might have looked at that code and thought, wait a second, that looks like HTML just mixed right into JavaScript. And you'd be totally right. That's a special syntax called JSX, and it's one of React's superpowers. It lets you keep the visual structure and the logic that controls it all together in one place, which makes your code so much cleaner and easier to figure out. Okay, so we can build static interfaces with our Lego bricks. That's cool. But how do we make them come alive? How do we handle clicks, typing, and all the things users actually do? Well, that brings us to interactivity. The flow is actually really simple. A user does something, like typing in a search box. This action updates something called state. You can just think of state as the component's memory. And the second that state changes, React automatically and super efficiently redraws the user interface to show that change. That's it. That's the whole magic trick. And here's the code that makes it all happen. See that function useState? That's what's called a hook, and it's what gives our component that memory we were talking about. Here, we're telling it to remember the search text. When a user types something, we call setSearchText to update that memory. And as soon as that happens, poof, React redraws the screen to show the new filtered results. It honestly feels like magic. So we know React is fantastic at building interactive UI components. But a full application needs more than that, right? Things like page navigation and getting data from a server. This brings us to a really important distinction, the difference between a library and a framework. Here's the key difference. React is the library. Think of it as this incredibly powerful engine that's really good at one thing, building user interfaces with components. A framework like Next.js is the whole car built around that engine. It adds the steering, the wheels, the GPS, all the other parts you need for a complete application, like routing and data fetching. And you have to understand, React has never just stood still. Back in 2015, React Native changed the game for mobile apps. In 2018, hooks completely revolutionized how we write components. And more recently, things like server components are pushing the absolute boundaries of performance. The team is always innovating, which is a huge reason why it stays so relevant. So, with all the shiny new tools that pop up every single year, you have to ask, why has React stayed on top for so long? Well, the answer really comes down to two things, its community and its stability. Just take a look at this number, 2 million. That is how many developers visit the official React documentation every single month. That's not just a user base, it's a massive global community of people building amazing things, solving problems together, and pushing the technology forward. When you choose React, you are never alone. So it really all comes down to this. You have this enormous, helpful community for support. The library itself is incredibly stable because it is battle-tested at a massive scale inside Meta. Its versatility for web and native means your skills are super portable. And for companies, it lets teams own entire features from end to end, which breaks down the barriers between different platforms. Okay, let's do a super quick recap of what we've learned. The core of React is all about building UIs with those reusable Lego brick components. JSX is that special sauce that brilliantly mixes your markup and your logic. State and hooks are what give your components memory and make them interactive. And finally, remember that React is the powerful UI library at the very heart of a much larger ecosystem of frameworks. And that's React in a nutshell, from a single component to a global community. Of course, the best way to really learn is to get your hands dirty and build something. So the only question left is, what are you going to build first? Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.